Welcome everyone to the Fireside chat on understanding the impact and influence of UGC and influencer marketing. Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you, Praanesh, for joining me here. And welcome to the audience. So before we start, I just wanted to share some tidbits from the Ipsos research report that we've done. I think user-generated content is considered to be the most genuine form of engagement with customers to building relationships. And influencer marketing is probably considered the best in today's scenario to actually build sustainable growth. So understandably, brands are engaging with influencers to share valuable insights on their products and to build relationships. The Ipsos report talks about how digital marketing is considered a very effective tool, and especially given the fact that the entire industry is growing at 25 to 30%. Currently valued at US dollars 530 million, but we see this realm expanding. So let's jump into my first question to both of you all. Where companies are collaborating so much with influencers and providing valuable insights on their products, on their services. So I'll ask this question first to Praanesh, and then probably we'll move to Saurabh. So how has UGC and influencer marketing changed over the last 2-3 years? And how is the buying behavior different now from what it was previously?
Speaking from the perspective of a partner to brands, what we observed earlier when we used to work with brands before, influencer marketing was considered as a subset of the performance media or the paid media, right? Usually, let's say if it's 100% on the performance media spends, anywhere between 2 to 3% used to be parked, right? So when planners or brand managers were looking into it, okay, I'm investing in Facebook, Google influencers, right? And it was almost always a standard practice, right? Now we see brands actually, especially the brands which are reliant more towards the word of mouth and consumer voices and all that, starting to plan campaigns around influencers itself rather than looking at it as an amplification medium, right? That's an immense shift. Besides that, there are other micro trends. I'm sure Saurabh will speak about those.
No, I see a paradigm shift from maybe we can map it down to COVID times. The way media scene has changed, the way trust has really come up as one factor, which is becoming extremely important in deciding which medium we should go behind and the messaging, etc. We've seen a huge jump of digital media overall, right? And with it, there are also questions. In fact, at the time of COVID itself, a lot of mediums were under question that what is the trustworthiness of a medium, right? From that lens itself, the journey of a brand from awareness to consideration to discovery, now influencer marketing plays an amazing role in building your awareness to discovery, right? And beyond. And therefore, yes, not only performance, but it brings trust with it, and therefore brand building also becomes extremely possible by digital media. So I see a huge role play. There are companies which start their media journey with only influencer marketing campaigns these days. Mm-hmm. So the play has really shifted.
Yeah. So just adding a point to what Saurabh said, I've seen brands starting to hire, the first marketing team will have a marketing head, and soon enough they start hiring an influencer marketer in-house, right? I've not seen social media managers sometimes who are full-time in the brand side, especially a lot of D2C and consumer-facing brands started to focus in terms of hiring full-time influencer managers, which means that they're not looking at as something which they should outsource to an agency. They want to handle it close to themselves.
Yeah, so it's actually what you're saying is that it is becoming more mainstream to their entire media planning business. So I have a question here, right? So in traditional marketing, one would use celebrities to endorse a product. You also talked about the trust and authenticity that comes in. So, when you use a celebrity, there is a presumption and, apprehension that, okay, celebrity wouldn't have used that product. But with influencer marketing, you presume that they would have used the product. So if this is going to scale, right? We are all seeing the business scaling. So how do you ensure that the influencer has used the product and is therefore promoting and advocating it? It's an underlying assumption that as a consumer, I make that if an influencer is promoting a product, that they've got an experience with the product, they've used the product. So, but if it starts scaling, how do you do? And so what's the trade-off, between using a celebrity versus an influencer? Does it vary by product category? Does it vary by price point of the category? Like, for maybe luxury brands or luxury products, you would use an influencer and not so much for a mass market product. And is there a variation that you see between cities as well?
No, again, Adam, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 markets, metros, very, very different play. Same thing, celebrity will have a different role in a metro kind of a situation. Maybe their role goes down a little bit. Trustworthiness is extremely high of a celebrity in lower metros right now, tier 2, tier 3 towns. So again, from a perspective that age bracket will play a part, market will play a part, what segment your brand is will play a part. I think all of them will have to determine whether celebrity makes more sense or influencer marketing makes more sense. Again, keeping in mind that celebrity, lot of issues. Again, even today when we talk, I heard about a case where one of the celebrities was endorsing KFC as a brand, and suddenly there was a news that she's a vegetarian. So these are faux pas and absolutely not acceptable. And influencer marketing does play a part here, that you bring that authenticity over polished content, which is more accepted in today's, the consumers are more open for real content. It can be a little raw, let it not be polished, but it has to be authentic. So that authenticity is being brought.
Yeah, authenticity, I think, is central to the entire UGC and the influencer marketing space. So the question to you again, Praanesh, is, we talked about awareness, consideration, then decision making, and then probably conversion into, advocacy. And, Mr. Keshwan was also talking about, how that entire journey has been changing. So how do you see this journey change, the entire expectations from an influencer? I mean, let's say, within influencers also, when competition increases, you'll have some influencers who have more impact and some a little less. So what is your expectation when what should brand expect from an influencer? What sort of metrics would they use to measure the performance of an influencer?
The metrics which, brands should use actually changes, situation to situation or context to context, right? Especially when we are looking at how the evolved brands or the brands who have fully adopted influencer marketing as a core medium of this thing, we see them looking for more substantial outcomes rather than just reach and engagement or maybe even video views, right? It is, to be very frank, it's still a hit and trial in terms of let's say if you're doing a store launch and can influencers drive footfalls to the store launch, etc. and all that, it's a very hit and trial, right? Basically understanding that any particular new methodology which you're using for leveraging influencers goes through hit and trial is what at least the evolved brands are following, and they're fair enough to understand sometimes if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But when it starts scaling, then they start framing the new metrics and methodologies. At least all the, if you look at it, all the consumer devices brands are doing it very well, and they are on top of their A game in terms of influencer marketing. In fact, I learn a lot from these CMD brands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Praanesh, on that note, the Ipsos report also talks about how influencer marketing has actually, and UGC both in travel, in retail, and probably to a larger extent in automobile. So Saurabh, my question to you would be, let's say, when you look at influencer marketing, how does one handle those technically complex products, or how do you see this evolving in B2B space? Because when you talk about content marketing, you could probably, when you buy a car, you actually are not looking so much on awareness, but you would actually go in depth about the car, understanding the features and technology and things like that. So what is the role of an influencer marketing? How could companies who are operating in the B2B space actually leverage this? How are technically complex products?
I think people like Praanesh are really solving this well by actually rating the influencers themselves, right? Putting authenticity on their reviews, their followers, and whatever they do. There is a cross-check which is happening of the influencers also, because there's a huge economy which is coming up of macro and nano influencers.
Absolutely.
It is extremely difficult and cluttered at the same time to keep a track. Expectation from marketers will have to mellow down, because there is no standardization as such. It is being brought, it will take its own time. because newer and newer people will start coming into the space as influencers who are not trained right now, right? So they will also learn the do's and don'ts, and then they will start becoming better. So from a marketer's perspective, it has to go down. What they will have to keep in mind, when we start planning a media plan, we have 4-5 pillars on which we start discussing whether a particular campaign has to move. It can be reach, frequency, it can be impact, continuity, it can be dominance, right? Now, how does influencer marketing play here? If influencers are good, definitely it creates a lot of impact in the mind of the consumer, because you're already following that person. You are following that person day in and day out, and you will start doing what he's doing. Therefore, reduce frequency automatically because impact is going up. That is one play which I think has worked well for me and my company BMEG as well, and even my previous companies as a starting play. But the moment influencers start becoming big, your awareness scores also start playing up. So those are the ways the marketer has to maneuver in terms of expectation. Again, don't go behind all the 4-5 factors, go behind 2 to 3 of them at a time, and then you approach it.
Yeah, that's a very valid point that you make, when he's talking about factors. And, Qoruz, you help companies actually choose influencers. He talked about how you allow them, you have rating of influencers and all of that. So in addition to what he talked about, how should brands look for influencers? What should be their key criteria? Because I know it's a trial and run. It's all evolving. There are things to learn, things to unlearn probably, and it's very, very dynamic. So what are the things that a brand or a marketer should probably keep top of mind? There are 10 things. The traditional one has already evolved and matured. But in this space, dynamic space, should they handle this?
See, the basic 3 things which we keep iterating on, and beyond that, like a human layer is definitely required. The basic 3 things is performance of the influencer consistently and historically. Second is the relevancy of the audience. And the third is the associations which the influencer has had in your industry, or whether it's even working with the competition or not, right? These are the 3 basics. Beyond that, brands even look into things like what is the character of the influencer, what is the tonality which the influencer usually uses and speaks with. Is the influencer even active in comments or not, right? In fact, I remember speaking to a brand manager who told me that so this is an actual example with one of the Titan brands. I don't remember the exact brand manager. He told me that whenever we do associations between Nayanthara and Samantha, we always see the sales higher in Nayanthara whenever we do that association than in Samantha. Both of them have pretty much similar associations, similar audience engagement, similar audiences which are actually following them also. These are things which you cannot put behind a check mark, right?
So how does one track this? Do you all provide any additional services and things like that to track it?
So besides that, if it's anything more specific, especially when your spends per influencer or spends per celebrity is going higher than a certain number and all that, it's we have to take into consideration and work with the mainline agency itself to actually understand the characteristic and heuristics and all that. You cannot put numbers to these, unfortunately.
Praanesh, you had earlier said that 2 to 3% was earlier what was being spent, and today our Ipsos report says that at least 10 to 20% of the marketing budget is moving to influencer marketing. So Saurabh, from your media planning perspective, since influencer marketing is actually taking center stage, how do you see this evolving? What are the 4-5 things? You did mention about what are the 4-5 things marketers or brand owners should look at. So how do you expect this to change over the next few years? And also, how should they allocate? What budget should they allocate for this activity?
So, Jayashree, there's no thumb rule as such. Again, it will all depend on the brand cycle. If a brand is a startup, they will have to be conscious about, because there the game is you do a pilot in one market, you see whether it is working or not, you do pressure tests there. If it's working, you scale it up, right? So one of the electrical brands we're working with in Bangalore was actually trying this route. They're doing well at a national level. They have experimented cricket, but they have also understood that cricket is not sustainable for them. Now, what they want to do is go back and become more ROI conscious, take up just 2 markets, start with influencer campaigns, don't overlay immediate other parallel campaigns, have the other campaigns in other part of the period, so that you can assess whether this campaign is doing well in that market or not, right? Once that is doing well, they are not spending behind other mediums, ATL medium at all, because regional play is increasing tremendously. It is being more effective, and consumers are also happy once they are interacting with influencers of local stature, right? So it really saves you a lot of money, but yes, whether it is at your product life cycle it is working or not, you have to do pressure tests at a smaller scale, then scale it up.
Yeah. So, you talked about ROI. So, I mean, I understand that, there are no measures right now, and you said probably you do this in isolation before you scale it up.
Yes.
But one interesting thing that, which I can pick from your thing is you talking about regional disparities. So, Ipsos has come up with the Ipsos Global Trends Report 2024. It's the 10th year running, where we do this across 5 million consumers across the globe, and we talk about what are the emerging trends. And in that, they talk about techno wonder, the technology advancements that are happening. And then they talk about splintered societies, right? There is an increasing focus on cultural diversity, on religion, and things like that. And the other important one was on the post-COVID. I think all of us have realized that there is, one is escapism to individualism, right? So it's all becoming an individual-based society. So when you talk about these geopolitical risks that are happening, and we're talking about individualism, we're talking about regional disparities which are coming into focus. So what are the things that marketers and brand managers should be aware of, given this context of how the society is changing? You talked about regional influencers coming in, but are there anything else that they need to take care of? How do you actually handle the churn that is likely? The geopolitical risks can actually probably put one platform out, right? So how do you handle that churn?
We are a company which is building on top of these platforms, right? So we observe what is these guys doing, right? Earlier, to be really frank, like social media platforms used to look like, okay, there is a hatchback car, and there is a sedan, and there is a coupe, and there is an SUV. Now every social media platform is like a crossover, right? When TikTok went out, Instagram did reels, YouTube came up with shorts, LinkedIn started pushing short form content video, right? And TikTok is, in US at least, they're also discussing how to go about text content, like Threads and X.com, right? So it's not like, what I see is like, earlier when we used to do campaigns, and I used to be a social media manager, and we used to plan brand stories across, and we used to have this theory that whatever comes across in our, let's say, Instagram page, everything has to have the same flavor, everything has to have the same tonality, etc., and all that. And there's a storytelling which we try to do, sometimes even stories told over multiple posts and multiple content pieces. Realistically now, how it works is you work for algorithms, right? So you just try to get successive or consistent one piece of content which tries to go viral, and you try to have a hope that that happens more frequently. And it's going to be the same formula across every single platform now.
Yeah. So Saurabh, the last question, of course, since time is up. So how should we handle these regional disparities and the cultural nuances that we're talking about?
I think we just need to be a little more aware about what is happening around us. General knowledge really is important for all the marketers. We all know what is happening in West Bengal, and therefore what to stay away from, right? Similarly, what is happening in some of the other countries, and therefore what should we talk about, what should we not talk about. Play safe. If required, take advice from people who have been in that space. Because you cannot experiment at this. Also be aware about government regulations like crypto, fintech, gaming, etc. I think in case you have a crossover with these kind of industries, be doubly vigilant.
Anything from your side on closing remarks?
I think Saurabh said it well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Saurabh and Praanesh. Thank you, audience, for the time that you've spared us. Thank you so much.